Hi, welcome. I'm Kyle Harris. I'm a designer at Atomic Object, and today we're going to dive into Figma a little bit for this post and for this video. If you're finding the video, it's also linked to a post at spin.atomicobject.com where you can find every single day the designers, the developers, the delivery leads, marketing, managing partners. Everyone is contributing to our blog to talk about our expertise in different areas. And today we're going to dive a little bit into my favorite program, which is Figma. Design programs change all the time. Figma feels like it's here to stay. I hope that doesn't age like milk. But today we're going to create this, which is a fun little button. It's got some micro interactions to it. Some animations, some hover states, even a press state right there. We're going to create this as a component, and we're going to do this in a way that's reusable, utilizing the variants and properties, for components. And then as we bring over an instance, of this button, into our project, what can we change about it to make it fit, the context in which we're using the button, but also to create that consistency. So let's dive right in. Oh my gosh, it's already done. We already have the button completed here. But no, we are going to do this. We're gonna delete everything. Can you guys believe that? All right, it's all gone. That button is gone. The playground is still here, showing our prototype, but we're gonna get rid of that too. What we are gonna keep though is some icons that I pulled over from Iconify, which is just a plugin within Figma here. And so these are staying. These are here to stay. We're gonna leave these. But what's really important about the way to utilize icons, first of all, is make sure that they all have the vectors, the artwork all has the exact same name. They all have the exact same name. That's something that when recoloring instances of your icons inside of, when they're nested inside of other components in those instances, make sure that they have the exact same name. So keep that in mind. So get your icon library set up for what we want to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into buttons here. We're actually going to reorder this. Playground will be at the top. Playground is just what I use for when I'm just messing around inside of a file or inside of a project. So we have our buttons here. So let's start creating a button. Number one is we're gonna create a frame. I always create frames, for this sort of thing. Just drag it out however you want. The hotkey is F. Press F to get a frame. Press the hotkey T here to get some text. All buttons need a label, and we're gonna type button inside of here. Our font, Noto Sans bold 16. I think that's fine. The fill color right now being black, I think is fine too. But number one, let's name all of our file or all of our layers here. So let's call this button. Number one thing that we want to do is we want to set up an auto layout. How amazing are auto layouts in Figma? So we have that here. We've got our button, our label positioned inside of here. Let's make sure this is centered. We always are going to want our label, centered inside of here. But up here, we can kind of see now we've got the width is 74, the height is 154. That feels really odd, right? It's just, it's a very odd looking button. So let's adjust some of this stuff. First of all, horizontal direction, we're going to make go right. Because remember we had that icon sliding out, to the right side here. So we're gonna make it, stretch to the right. So these things, when we put them in, they're gonna line up left and right horizontally. And the space between, let's set it up as 8 right now. It's a nice even number, divisible by 8s and 4s and 12s, 24s. It's kind of a rule that I like to utilize. So some of the spacing can be arbitrary here. Again, utilizing that rules of 8s. Let's do 32. And this here, I don't know, let's try 16. What does that give us? That gives us a height of 54 for a button. It's a pretty good sized button. It's meeting a lot of the accessibility standards that we're going to want. Maybe this is more of a primary size button, nice and big. We can adjust these sizes if we really want to. So here we have a button. And as we resize it, that label is going to stay in between. You know, as we type more things in here, maybe you guys can see the background. Let's zoom in. You know, maybe just a hair here. All right, cool. So we've got a button label here. That's a silly button label. Especially at the component level, I like to really call the layer like what it is. So this is a button label. When we bring over that instance, you know, it can be called whatever. We'll rename it to whatever we want. So awesome. Here we have the start of it. Let's do a couple of more things. We've got a height of 54. Let's do, you know, we want that pill shape for this button. So, you know, I just like to match, you know, the height. I'm not really sure that it matters, you know, but it makes it easy. So let's just call it 54. We could probably put anything over half of it, right, to make sure that rounded shape stays. But here we are at 54. And let's give it a background color. I don't remember the exact hex codes I used, and normally we'd probably have some sort of a color library set up, but nothing there. You know, maybe there's a nice purple color that we can use. Oh, that looks nice. It's actually, let's go a little bit darker right here, and then here let's change the fill of this to just a standard white FFF. So there we go. So now we have the start of our button. We've got the label inside of it. You know, it's going to resize. You know, this button is setting at hugging, so that means it's going to hug the contents inside, and then it's going to utilize this padding here kind of around the edges. So no matter how long that label gets, for this button particularly, we want it to be able to grow with the content inside. So cool. So we have our label here. Let's create another frame. So we'll hit F, and our cursor turns a little bit right here, and let's stretch this out. Let's hold Shift, and let's make it a square here. So we now have 24. You know, again, 8s, 12s. You know, that's kind of the rule that I like to live by. And we're gonna call this icon container. I always like to put my icons in a container. Then when we recolor stuff, it takes the container property and not necessarily the icon property. It's kind of an important thing when utilizing Figma. Cool. And then we'll go up to our assets, and what did we have? We had that sword, right? So let's bring that sword over, and we'll drop it in here. It's black because that was, you know, this is the instance of it. So we're actually gonna make this white as well. And then we're gonna scale it by half here. Let's just sort of center it, and there we go. So now we have the start of our button. We've got the label, we've got the icon, we've got the pill kind of around it. You know, if we took this into well, it's not a component yet, so we can't take it in. But that's what we're going to do next. Is we're going to take this, and let's right click here. And let's create a component. Cool. So we now have our button component, but this isn't quite right? If we take this in here, take it into here, and we take our button, drag it into our playground. You know, we can rename it, you know, if we wanted to, do whatever, that works correctly. But if we preview it here, you know, nothing's happening. We'll zoom in. Nothing's happening. So let's we got to get that stuff set up, and we got to get all of the other variants and properties set up as well. So let's go back. So I think before we do anything else, one other thing that I really like to do is I like to put, you know, this label. I'm going to put this label into a frame of itself, and we're going to call this button label. And we're actually going to give it an auto layout as well. Because what we're doing is this button label, the height of it is only 22, but this icon is 24. So if we ever needed an instance of this button where we didn't want an icon, which is something that we are going to be creating, the button size will change because it's hugging the contents inside. So we're going to take this, and we're actually going to give it a fixed height here. And we're going to give it a fixed height of 24. So, and then, you know, make sure that button label is centered inside of it here. Cool. So we've got that. That's all set up correctly. All right. So number one thing, let's set up some of the properties of this. And if we come down here, we see this content here, and it's already taken the text from it. It says button label. But what we want to do is we want to add a property for this. And we'll actually, the name of it we're going to call button label. Or maybe we'll call it button text. Let's call it button label. And the value of it, what the value is button label. So, because it's taking that. So, again, kind of naming things properly, from the beginning. Cool. So we've got that. And then we've got this icon container. So one thing is maybe we don't always want an icon with this button. Maybe there's an instance where we want the icon, coming out on a hover, but maybe there are instances where we just don't want an icon at all. So let's also set that up. And what we're going to do is on this layer one here is we're going to create a Boolean for this. So we're going to apply a Boolean property. And Boolean just means yes or no, right? True or false. So we're going to button icon true. It's true that we are going to have an icon in this state. And then that is all we need. No, that is not all we need for that. Actually, I think it is. Okay. So if we take over an instance of this now, boop, we have our button label, which we can call this begin fight, right? We can either, show it or hide it. So some instances, maybe we do want an icon. Other instances, maybe we don't. So let's delete that instance of it. We still have our component here. But now we need to create our states. We need to create our hover and our press states. So let's go over to properties here. And we're going to create a component property. And we're going to create a variant. Cool. So now it added this purple box. If you're familiar with Figma and the variants, nothing's different there. But for this property one, we're actually, let's name this correctly. State. Let's call it button state. And for this property, we're just going to call this resting. So when this is inside of our design file, this is the normal state that it's going to have. When we create prototypes, though, we'll just have to drag in one instance of this component, and all these states are going to be hooked up, which is really exciting. So let's create another instance here. It created button state 2. I don't think we want that. We want to call this hover. And let's create another instance. If you're on one of the variants here and you press this plus, oh, it actually did it that time. Okay. Sometimes it's kind of finicky, but we're good on that one. So let's call this our pressed state. So while we're pressing our mouse button, or even like a finger press, it's going to go to this state. If we go to our prototype here, if we just drag out here and we come down to our button state hover, because it's understanding that we want to go to that variant of it. Let's change this to while hovering. We're going to change to hover, and let's make this nice, and let's ease in, and we're going to do 300 milliseconds. I think that sounds great. Cool. And now, when we're actually hovering it, when our mouse is actually over top of it, we want to do while pressing. So while you're pressing down, not necessarily on a click, because a click is what we're going to do to take us somewhere, but while pressing, because you can kind of press and hold something and it should retain that state, much like a physical button. If you press it, whoop, it's going to move, right? So while pressing, we're going to change it to the button state pressed, and we're going to make this just a little bit quicker. Maybe, I think 100 milliseconds. Sounds great. Perfect. So now we have that, but these are all the same still. So one thing that we knew that we wanted to do is we want that button or that icon to kind of come out, almost like it's coming out from from behind it. So what we can do is inside of our resting state here, let's click into this. Let's expose it and let's open up our design. That's important. We're no longer prototyping. So inside of resting here, we have the space between, which is 8, but we can change it just for this instance. And we already know that our icon is 24 by 24. So if we do a little bit of math, we want this button label to be right in the center. So we just change this space between to -24. Seems pretty easy, right? It's -24. But what we are going to want to do is inside this icon container here is we're going to want the pass-through to be 0. There we go. And now I'm remembering one other thing that I wanted to set up. We may not always want a sword icon. We're going to want to create an instance property. So with this sword icon here, what we can do is, we can select from any of our other ones here, but we're going to set this up and apply an instant swap property. And so what we'll call this is icon artwork, maybe. And the value is the sword. Perfect. And so let's just make sure that that is set up on all of these. And it wasn't. So what I do recommend doing is before you create your other variants of your states is just to make sure everything is set up properly, right? So you can see it now. Icon artwork is there. If we select the sword icon artwork, and if we select this sword here, we got icon artwork. Awesome. So this is all set up. If we go back here, we can now see, it flies out. Awesome. Maybe it's a little bit slower than I'd want, but I think it's fine. Let's add a little bit more interaction to that. So one thing that we did is that button kind of grew a little bit. Again, we can utilize these auto layout padding, or I think we could even do scale, but I like to use the padding. So let's actually increase this on this hover instance. We'll increase this to 36, and maybe we'll make this 18 there. So now, if we come over here, we're gonna get a little bit of a bigger button. Let's actually fix that right now. That button's kind of resizing awkwardly. So right now it's put at top and left, meaning it's gonna take it from this corner. So let's actually go center and center. And when we check this out, now it's going to be expanding from the center. Go figure. Cool. So we've got that. Let's add a few more graphical enhancements to this. So on our fill, on our hover variant here, let's add a little bit of a gradient here. We'll do linear. I'll do white maybe, and white. Let's kind of pull it over from the side, just a little bit different here. Pull it over from the side. That white, maybe we'll do like a 50. And up here are our blending properties. And let's put this at soft light. Ooh, nope. And let's go back to 100 on that. Oh, this is also set to black. So let's set that as white. So, did that do it? I don't think it did. If we go normal, let's go screen. Screen. For some reason, it's a little bit. It's hard to tell. So what is going on here? Let's go soft light again. Oh, you know what? I know why. Because on the actual fill, it is set to 20%. So if we change that, oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. It's got that nice rich color in there now. Very vibrant. Cool. And let's do something very similar for the press state here. But we're gonna go opposite here. We're going to do another linear. We'll keep it black and black. I think that's fine. Like that. I got to remember to change on this here back to 100. So, but that's way too dark. So let's actually take that down to maybe 50. Let's keep it at like a soft light too. Let's actually take that down maybe to like 25. So now when we test this out, boop, and then when we press it down, oh yeah, it's looking good. But one thing is, maybe we want this label to get a little bit bigger. So let's actually select our label in here. If we go to our button labels, 16, let's actually just make it 17. Ooh. So now when we test this out, oh yeah, we've got that going. That's looking good. And then everything's kind of scaling up. The icon's not scaling. We could make it scale if we wanted to. Well, I don't think it's necessary. Cool. So that is looking really good. And now let's add some shadows. Oh yeah, let's make this button feel like it's really coming up off the screen a little bit. And then when we press it, it's kind of going right back down. So we're actually going to apply a shadow to both of these instances. A drop shadow there, and that's a little bit heavy there. So let's increase the blur, not to 100, maybe to 10. Let's increase the Y to maybe 6 on both of them. I'm going to make them both consistent, and then I'll bring the pressed one back in. But this spread, I want this spread to be not disabled. So what I want is I want the button, that shadow to not necessarily go out quite as far. I really want to bring it in a little bit more. But what is happening here is that if we tooltip over, it should tell us why we can't. It's not doing it. But the reason that we can't is because I don't know why they got rid of that tooltip. It was actually really helpful because the first time I tried to do it and I couldn't figure out why, is that it has to be clip content. So if we clip the content, now stuff cannot go outside of this frame here. So now when we come here and we go to our drop shadow, we can now adjust our spread. And I actually want to take our spread down to like -8. Let's increase our opacity a little bit. So the spread doesn't quite go as far, but it still has the same sort of intensity. So it's kind of narrower. But now we've got this instance here, and it kind of pops off just a little bit. Just a little bit, and when you press it, oh, it's the same thing. That's right. We need to adjust that down. So let's go to our drop shadow. It doesn't need to go 6 pixels down anymore. Let's actually just make it go, 2 pixels down. And the blur, because it's getting closer to that screen, it's not popped off as much. Like it's not going to cast as much of a blur. Let's actually take that maybe down to 6. Spread, let's leave that there and let's see what happens. So pops up a little bit, and now yeah, it really feels like it's kind of going back down. You're really physically pressing that button. So cool. We've created a pretty fun button here. If we pull this out now, an instance of this, or you know what? We have an instance of it here already. We can see we've got our button states resting, hovered, and pressed. Our button icon. So whether we want to show it or not, we're not seeing it here because that's intentional. We want that button to come out, but maybe there's an instance where we don't want that button to have an icon. The button label, is there in the artwork. So let's create actually a couple of instances of this, and let's just see how this is working. So what was our first button? We're gonna change the labels inside of the properties on the right. I think it's important. It might not be, but I always do it as a best practice. We're gonna call this one begin fight. Okay, and we're gonna have that sword icon. It's going to show the icon. This one here, let's do this like set sail, and we'll change the icon to a compass. But maybe this icon or this button here is maybe more secondary. So we don't need to show that icon. We can just turn that container right off. And this one maybe we'll just say cancel. So now when we come back into here, we have begin fight with a sword and set sail, and it's got that compass right there. And then cancel, it still has all the same properties, but we just don't have that icon in there. And then we can create, if we wanted to, more properties. Maybe we want, primary colors or secondary colors, maybe even different sizes too. But let's just focus on the colors right now. What we want to do though, let's because we know, let's be intentional. Let's add a new property here. Let's add a variant, and we'll call this button, color, or yeah, I think button color works. And then we'll call this one purple. And we can take these now. Let's just create another instance of them. But because we already have ones that match exactly like this. It's the button color is giving us a problem. So let's call this one green. Actually, let's do something even crazier. Let's call it gray, right? Okay. And under our selection colors here, let's give this just like a really light gray color here. Perfect. And then we've got our white down here, and our white is being applied to our button label and to our icon container. So if we select both of those, we can see that they're white. Let's give these a nice dark gray color here so that the contrast is appropriate. We'll copy that. I think it was just 333, but we'll keep it, make sure. Not 333FF. No. 333, yep, and it's showing up correctly. And then here, perfect. So now we've got that, and if we come over into here, we can set these ones now to be gray. And the button icon, some of them have an icon, some of them don't. So because they're all selected, but that one's good, that one's good. This one we don't have it. We come over here. All these are looking really solid. So another thing that I think is really important is to name our buttons. So what are these? So they all just say button right here. When we take this into a prototype, it's fine, but our developers are probably going to want to know what they're using. Now we can name it exactly what the label is, but could we be a little bit smarter with some intentionality as well? Maybe we have a button that says something like play, right? Well, play, what are we playing? Let's come over here. We'll say play, and the icon artwork, we've got an arrow. We don't necessarily have a play button, but that's okay. If this is like Netflix, right? It just says play. But maybe when if we're using like a screen reader or we want some alt text to go along with that, let's be intentional about what this button name. Maybe it's like play, episode name, right? Or show, title, something like that. So that, now when this is in there, inside of our design mockups and inside of our prototypes, developers can come in and see like, oh, this needs to take these properties and for any sort of like text to speech or anything like that, we can add a lot more information just inside of our design files, utilizing some variables and things like that. So that is it for today. I hope everyone learned something awesome. I know when some of those new component variants and properties came out, I was a little bit confused by them. But they were a lot of fun. A lot of fun to learn. It's a lot of fun to apply, and it's fun to see just how quickly the workflow can kind of come together and create a really powerful and robust design system, utilizing these components and instances, and tweaking just a couple of little things. We can make the application just right for what we need it. So thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions, comment on the video below. Comment on the spin post, our blog post, if you're viewing it within that. Again, that's at spin.atomicobject.com. Again, I am Kyle Harris. I'm a designer at Atomic Object. We build custom software for clients all over the country and sometimes the world. And utilizing strong design tools like Figma really help us with the workflows to get things done. And I'm so happy to be able to share some of the knowledge that we've learned as a design team on how to utilize Figma the best. So everyone take care, and until next time, happy designing. Bye.